IVM.
Hi everybody, just wanted to ask everyone for a quick favor. We're running a brand survey right now and would really appreciate it if you could let us know what you think about the advertising on IVM. Go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and do let us know. As part of this, we'll be selecting 10 random participants and sending them some IVM swag, so do fill out those surveys.
All right, after the longest sound check in the history of GayBCD, welcome back. And this is again another special episode where we have a guest. So hi Farhad and hi Unnati. Welcome.
Unnati. You have to excuse me. Can I tell you why I'm so charged up today?
Why? Because the day is ending?
No. So, two things quickly, okay? Number one, let it be known that Gurgaon is an amazing city. Whoever's
hey!
I love it.
You thumbed your nose when I said I love partying in Gurgaon. I used to love going back.
I
to
don't
Gurgaon.
Remember what thumbed my nose. What is that?
Like
man. Shut the fuck up. I don't.
You've been snarky when I said that.
So proof or it didn't happen.
Crow. I mean, we have recordings.
Great. So, I said
right
brief
there.
or did not happen.
Whatever, like podcasts. Our podcast is the brief. So
that's
anyway.
Number one. And second is, do you all know what intermittent fasting is?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
It's called...
I've been fasting and I've been doing the basic 16 hours. But lately, because again, I was in Gurgaon and I ate like a motherfucker, like my old self. Like, not even like my pre-Delhi self. I ate like my childhood morbidly obese type self. Like, oh, wow, yakni pulao, kebabs, mithai, like everything was going down my fucking throat. So ever since I've come back, I've been doing the 24-hour fast and I feel so good. First day, once you get a little hungry, it's like, oh my God, I feel like I'm boring here. Sorry. Hi.
Yes. So, first and foremost, Unnati, welcome to GayBCD. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll kind of get into our questions and our various segments, which I'm sure our lovely producers told you about. But yeah, just tell us a little bit about yourself and the audiences. So yeah. Over to you.
All right. So my name is Unnati. I am a non-binary queer person. My pronouns are they, them. I work as a psychologist. I'm very passionate about mental health. Also very passionate about mental health in the queer community because being a student, having been a student of psychology in like mainstream cis-het universities, I have realized that there is really not enough literature about how to be compassionate towards people that the cis-het world considers different.
Yeah.
So I'm all of my angst and anger from my teen queer years are directed towards correcting this problem as much as I can. Apart from that, I write poetry, I dance, I gobble Hollywood and Bollywood trivia like I've never eaten food. I could probably beat anybody and everybody at Damsharad and Dictionary.
Challenge on.
Beg to differ.
Challenge on.
No, okay, don't. This show is not about tall claims. Also, so first of all, I know between the three of us, me and Shunetro would win, and between Shunetro and me, I would win.
Oh, so, fuck you, please.
Krupya, dhanyavad, thanks.
Please. I win in multiple languages, just saying. Amazing. That's amazing because between Farhad and me, we're constantly singing praises of, the community of counselors and therapists and psychologists, because particularly for the community, I feel like we need this segment of people so much. We'll talk about that a lot throughout the episode, but we'll get to our first little bit, which we call TikTok, where we talk about news from the queer community. Do you guys have any news to share? I mean, I have one little bit, but which we dedicated it to last week's episode. But I mean, RuPaul being the highest awarded person of color at the Emmys, that's amazing for someone who's really grew up with all the odds stacked against against them, and it's now like has a business empire, so to say, a media empire. So that's great news. And Farhad doesn't like that Drag Race, so fuck you, Farhad.
Okay, it's not like I don't like Drag Race.
I know. You're not a super fan.
It.
Yeah, you're not
I
a
don't
super
care
fan.
about it. Yeah.
But that's the news I have. But any other more?
I don't have news, but I know it's Nicole Richie's birthday today, and at one point Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie were my best. Like I love Simple Life. It was one of my favorite shows growing up. And then out of the blue, someone sent me. I don't follow her on Instagram. I totally forgot about her. And then today, someone sent me her Instagram, and oh my god, she's amazing. Like
she's like that Simple Life persona. The Simple Life persona was like a even on. Paris. I mean, she's a smart cookie.
But see, again, Paris was always the breakout, right? Like Nicole Richie was always the friend. But what I loved was I went through her entire feed, and she's probably the most voracious reader. And
she's smart. She's also very smart, very shrewd businesswoman. Yeah,
but she does these monthly books that she's read in a month recommendations. First of all, it's so weird that Nicole Richie is doing that. I don't know why it's tough for me to believe. But so good.
Yeah.
So the news is it's Nicole Richie's birthday. That's my news.
Okay then. All right. But on that note, we'll dive right into our main segment right after a quick break.
Hey everybody, it's been a great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On the Longest Constitution, Priya narrates the long and ongoing battle of striking down Section 9 of the Hindu Marriage Act of 1955. That allows one party to appeal to the courts to restore his or her conjugal acts, and has unsurprisingly been used more by men than women. On Press Decode, Bhagda, Ragini, Sarah, and Adya talk about the inspiration behind the movie Hotel Rwanda. Venkatesh Saha, head of APAC and Middle East expansion at WISE, joins Anupam on Pesa to talk about foreign exchange services. And on the Life Manifesto, Zarina explains the difference between personality and personal brand. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. It really does help us. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors on the network this week: Cred, Bank of Baroda, Quota, CoinSwitch, Kuber, and Inter vPro. Thank you so much for making this possible.
So we're here talking with Unnati, and I'm talking to Unnati, speaking with Unnati, sorry. And welcome to GayBCD. We have a lot of questions for you, and I'm sure we'll have a great round of, this will be like a mini therapy session for us. Yes.
No, it won't. Because we don't answer questions in therapy, let's be honest.
Yeah.
I think this all the time. I'm one of those people before my session, I will actually write down in my Google Keep, I will write down all the questions that I have to bring up while I'm in therapy, because I want to bring up 50 things, right? I want to talk about 50 things and go through, and I don't want to miss anyone. But the moment I enter his room and I start talking to him, I talk about none of that shit, and I end up just talking in answers. Like
I know, this is so true.
I have no questions actually, and so much so that I'm like, once I read this somewhere, and maybe Unnati, you can agree or like entirely say that I'm wrong to say this, but a lot of times I feel like therapy is just literally someone's just hearing you out, and then you yourself arrive at the answer. Like that person's not giving you the answer sometimes.
That's a very oversimplified way of looking at therapy.
Sure.
Yes. It's like the start and the end of it.
I know,
all the stuff that happens in the middle that gets you from one place to the other.
Absolutely.
Is what therapy is.
No, in my personal therapy sessions, it's like I talk and I talk and I talk. So I'll start with the problem, and then I'll try to explain the problem. And while I'm explaining the problem,
will start making
I
sense
will
to
answer it, and then my therapist will say, yes.
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 You got it.
And I'm like, oh my God, 2,500 rupees for this.
Well, to start off on that note, as a queer individual, and I have no idea about your life experiences, but having had queer experiences, do you feel like it makes you makes your stance a more empathetic one as a psychologist, just from the get-go?
I mean, there are pros and cons. For example, it definitely the fact that I am very open about my identity in my professional field definitely makes my clients feel more seen. It makes them trust me maybe a little more than they would trust a cis-het appearing therapist. It definitely means that I am more invested in making sure that the services I provide are not harmful to my community. But also, I wouldn't say that because I'm queer, I have an edge over someone who's a cishet practitioner who's also doing the same amount of work, who's also equally passionate, who's also working every day to learn and unlearn all the biases that they might have accumulated, because we all live in a cishet society by default.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can also be a little bit of a drawback, because there might be clients who come with problems that are similar to mine, because I am also living life and going through my own motions, right? So there might be instances where what they're going through is so personally resonating with me that I really can't be objective, or I can't remove myself from how I think and be empathetic truly towards my client. So there are pros and cons, and I think that it's similar.
Amazing. I never thought of it like that, because a large number of, at least, and I don't know, Shanedra can back me up on this, but so many times we get messages about, hey, do you know a therapist? And more often than not, they've been burned in the past by going to a cishet, non-supportive, or someone who gave them advice that was totally not what they were looking for. And so when you started, I was like, wow, amazing. You know, like they can, but then you said the other side of it, and I never thought of it like that. That it can totally...
A lot of times people have this misconception that like, oh, I'm going to a queer therapist, they cannot do any harm. But I also know of so many queer clients who come to me with, you know, I had absolute blind faith in my therapist because I thought that they were queer and they'd understand, but they've been harmful as well, because we all have internalized a lot of the queer negativity, transphobia. Also, we all know that even within our community, there are people who have misconceptions about each other.
Absolutely.
I'm so fed up. I'm so fucking fed up.
So all of that can also come up in the biases that a therapist might have. And because we're therapists, right, like we can really gift wrap them and give them to you, okay, hum sahi hai, please take this and do not question us. So we also have those sort of therapists. However, yes, like statistically speaking, chances of a cishet unaware person harming a queer person in therapy are greater. No doubts about that.
Amazing.
So when you encounter queer individuals, and especially in the Indian milieu, let's say the Indian urban milieu, because that makes up a huge chunk of our listeners, urban, like tier 1, tier 2 cities. What's the number one problem that you that you witness the entire community facing in today's day and age? And something that maybe is surprising to you that's developing over and over.
That you think is an epidemic.
I think as a community, there's a lot of, lately, there's been a lot of like the elder queer generation having a very rigid idea of what it means to be queer, and like the younger queer generation trying really hard to not have any amount of like boxes even in the queer community. So I think a lot of clashes happen there. What I've noticed in like the Indian context is a lot of polarization when it comes to political stance within the queer community, because like there is this idea of, do we really, really want to fit in and be accepted and do whatever it takes to be the model minority? Or do we want to just be like, fuck you to like everybody and stick it to the man and just fuck off, you know? So because of that polarization, there's a lot of questioning of like, how much of my principles do I have to constantly scrutinize? Am I even like, am I really liberal or am I really leftist? If I'm not fully leftist or fully liberal, all of those things come into the questions of identity as well. And I think because of that scrutiny and because of that constant being like, is this real? Am I doing a good enough job of being a purist queer person? A lot of problems as a community, like with interacting with each other, that I've noticed through my clans.
That's interesting.
But how does it factor? Like, how does it get translated into a, like, is that how they say it? Like, with this whole political idea? No? Because I kind of totally relate to what you're saying. I totally keep talking about how, even though I am a part of the community and I'm out and I'm, I don't know, proud, but how I constantly feel like I'm out of place within my own community. So like, I totally related to what you're saying there. For a sec.
A lot of people do talk about how politics affects them and how there's, like, with the lockdown, especially like recently, there's been a lot of social media activism.
Yes.
Oh my God.
So there's a lot of these people that we looked up to on social media who were sticking it to the man and then going and buying into that capitalist ad nonsense by, like, you know, featuring on ads for like prominent brands that do zero for the community, and then being disillusioned by that. Oh, I thought she would be different. Oh, I thought they would be different.
Yeah.
A lot of that does come up in therapy too. You'd be surprised by how offended we get by our own expectations of people.
Yeah. I see a hot take, and regardless of whether I resonate with it, I somehow find it annoying. Like yesterday, you know, Michaela, how do you pronounce the name?
Michaela Coel. Coel.
Okay, you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And she did that whole speech.
Yeah.
And I even got pissed off that everyone was sharing a quote, even though I shared her quote. But I shared a quote because she was talking to writers, you know. And then suddenly I'm seeing like some douchebag who, like, I know is like very annoying and like only is a soft sangi or whatever, and he shared that quote. I was so fucking irritated, like, why are they sharing that quote? So I get
I used to so here's the thing, like, you know, I think again, and this is something that you can confirm or, like, you know, completely squash, but I feel like with us queers, we step into the fray, and I can only speak for myself here. We step into the fray of the larger society with a specialization in our head, with a depth of specialization in a field that we've built, and we kind of are ready to take on anyone, because the regular things that others were talking about, we were kind of excluded. Like, I know that cricket was something that I was never part of, which is why you fucking give me Oscars, you fucking give me films, you give me passion, you give me music. Those are things I will take someone on. So when people actually talk about the Met Gala, I want to say, children, I will teach you what Met Gala is, because I knew Met Gala before it was costumes, you know. So I
guess this is what Unnati was saying, Shanedra.
Yeah, exactly.
Gaze,
no, but like, here's my thing. I also, the other side of me is also every single day being someone who leads a team at my organization, is constantly becoming a student every single day. Because every single day I have to change how I think, because a 21-year-old enters the industry and I have to look into the mirror and say, I can't tell this person, hey, this is how it works. I have to change things around me so that it works for them, because this is the future.
Yeah.
This has to work for them.
This little inclination to change the way you think, right? Like, I'll give you an example. I was chatting with someone on Grindr yesterday, and instantly, great conversation, right? He's speaking very well, said a couple of funny things. I'm like, awesome, but no profile picture. And he sent me a few of his pictures, and I was like, okay, handsome, very sweet, but because there's no Instagram link, there's no profile picture or anything, I obviously happened to ask him, do you have Instagram or somewhere where I can get your vibe, basically? That's what I meant. He said, I don't. So I sent a funny GIF saying catfish alert, you know, because and he got offended. And I was like, I did not mean to offend you. He's like, what is this pressure to be on social media? And I was like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's no pressure to be on social media, but it's not my prerogative to assume that you are who you are saying that you
also,
are.
like, why do I have to trust you?
Yeah, but
why can I not have my
which is what I was
reservations
trying to tell him.
about you? Exactly.
Which is what I was trying to tell him. I'm not even going to get into hey, I'm not at a point in life that I want to be with someone who still has to hide, and I'm not going to get in all of that. But at least the fact is, I have some reservations meeting with someone who doesn't want to video call, who doesn't have a profile picture, who doesn't have an Instagram, not social. But he took it in a very, how can you? Yeah.
But Farhad, it's almost equivalent, and this is something I faced. I don't share news, I don't share dick pics ever since they got leaked. No, things got leaked. Okay, so yeah. I've been very, very careful since. So I'm very, very guarded about that. And so there are a lot of cases where people say, you're not sharing your dick pics, so why should I trust?
Oh my God, yeah.
And I hate it coming from them, but I mean, and then I put myself in their shoes and say exactly what you said. Like, why aren't you sharing a photo of your face with me? Like, for me, it's about connecting with the person. For them, it's about connecting with the dick. So
both ways, it's safety, right? Because like when Farad's talking to this person, Farad's looking out for his safety.
Myself,
absolutely.
The other person who has no online presence is also in some way, probably, if they're not a catfish, probably looking for their own safety.
Enough assurance. Yeah.
See, but my thing is, if it's a one-off case, right? It's okay. But what you just said, Shanetro, that's a genuine problem a lot nowadays, where until you exchange nudes, we can't meet. That's a new threshold we've reached. I feel. I'm not saying, again, not all of us have reached there. There are like conversations where that does not happen. But it's becoming a part of the zeitgeist, like, of the gay zeitgeist in some way, where it's like a common thing where, oh, okay, so if I don't show you my dick, like, you won't meet me? What the fuck? Like, it's so bizarre. Like, what are these things? And I'm so happy you said...
Still, if we get into the, like, bizarre stuff about whether it's queer or not. It's like the straights have some really bizarre shit happening on their dating profiles.
I'd love to know because I live under this, like, I live in this ivory tower where I feel like things are just fine there. I'd love to know because I'll tell you what, us queer people, we need to know, and I'm not saying you have to break confidentiality and stuff, but us queer people, we also need to know that the straight world is equally screwed up, and we are not the only ones. We're all
I don't think that the queer world is screwed up at all.
Please elucidate.
Our view is exactly, which is why we have you, Unnati, because again, in some ways, our view has become
myopic. We keep saying this. Yeah. Please tell us why. Why do you think so?
I don't think that the queer world is screwed up at all, because when we try to quantify something as screwed up and not screwed up, we're basically trying to say that this is okay and the other thing is not, or this is shocking and the other thing is not.
Yeah.
But it's just like, okay, so for example, if you show Game of Thrones to my grandmother, she will die of a heart attack. But if you show, if you talk about Game of Thrones with somebody who's from my generation, they'll be like, "Ha, theek hai na, whatever." So it's not that Game of Thrones isn't or is shocking. It's about how desensitized we get.
Yeah.
So it's just about like the straights, the cis-het people are desensitized to a different kind of nonsense. The queer people are desensitized to a different kind of nonsense. I'm not saying that a lot of disturbing stuff does not happen. But then that happens regardless of your identity, your sexual orientation, your gender, your social strata, whatever.
Sure.
So in that sense, and I also feel like, this very casual way of us addressing our own community as fucked up comes from a very internalized idea of there must be something wrong.
Yeah.
And we don't pay nearly enough attention about how we talk about ourselves. For us to even start the conversation about why are you talking about us like that? So there's a certain line between reclaiming the queer slang and not working on the language with which we view our own selves and our community. So
I totally get what you mean. Yeah. You know, he's still my best friend. Like, my best friend had a phase, he's a little chill now, but he had a phase where he was on prep, but he was raw dogging the fuck out of everyone. In fact, so much so that I remember when he had gone to Berlin, he sent me pictures of his asshole, and I was like, okay, this is not healthy. This is not healthy. But because he was my best friend, I felt like I can't be another person telling him that his lifestyle is wrong, or, you know, what he's doing is wrong. And somewhere I kind of like, I turned it into introspection that why am I having a tough time accepting that this is how he sexually is expressing himself at this point in time in his life right now, you know? Why am I assuming the worst for him, that something terrible is going to happen and this and that and all that? Even though he's like sending me like clamp open asshole pictures and, you know, like, I'm like, oh my God, this is like, are you sure? Are you fine? Oh my God. But I get it. Like sometimes even that comes with age, I guess, you know, sometimes where I did feel like, oh my God, the music they listen to is so bad. Oh my God, this is so bad. This is so bad. But now I'm just like, why am I such an uncle about it, basically? Like, why am I being...
the same variation goes for, like, whenever people talk about, okay, so how can we be more mindful of our language around queer people? How can we be more empathetic towards them, like as allies or anything, really? My basic question to them is basically just, why does what the other person is doing with their free time, body, consent, whatever, threatening you so much? Why is it making you feel
I don't know
unsafe?
if it's about threatening, but sometimes it is and really, I'm coming from an uncle-y space as I say this, but I'll give you an example. The other day, I was on Tinder or something, and someone's profile said abrosexual. Have you heard of abrosexual?
I have, yes.
I've never heard of abrosexual.
What is it?
I was like, wow, naya market mein, which is a terrible joke. But, you know, I was like, oh, there's a new one. And then I Googled it instantly. And basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, Unnati, but from what I Googled, it meant abrosexual is a person in the moment they know what sexuality they are, but that could change. Which I was like, that's the first 20 years of my life. I was an abrosexual because at some point I identified as bi, at some point I was identifying as gay, at some point I felt I was straight, you know. So it's just like, it's getting very tough to keep up. Like, I sometimes want to stay updated,
but
and
think
nobody
about,
owes me jack shit.
Yeah, but also think about it, Farhan. Isn't this exactly what was being said about our generation? It's so tough to keep up with these guys.
Exactly. Honestly, our episode with, you know what changed in me? Our episode with Madhuri.
Yeah.
When we did that episode with Madhuri, and for the first
Madhuri
time...
was a producer, and she came out as an ace on an episode. And yeah, Farhan.
And until then, I understood, okay, I had an idea, my idea of what asexual or ace is. And until I spoke to her, I was like, okay, there's a whole like spectrum within that, you know. So it's a me problem. It's my problem. I get it. Like, I'm not saying, oh, don't be abrosexual. First, I got excited. I thought it's like some new straight thing, like because it had the word bro in it. But no.
You thought it's something like metrosexual.
No, like I thought, oh, I'm a bro, but I fuck dudes, but I will never come out as gay. Like, I don't know, a brosexual. I don't know.
I mean, you know, touching on this topic of, you know, allies and stuff like that, one of the things that I struggle with very often is how do I find the balance to be welcoming, nurturing, but at the same time being on guard and not taking bullshit, because it gets a little difficult, right? Where sometimes there is ignorance coming from people who you would want to be allies. And then that ignorance kind of, you want to nurture them and educate them, but then it turns into this hot flash of anger wherein, who the fuck are you? Why is it my job to do this for you? You are taking up my space. Why is it still my job to make you better? What the fuck,
I
man?
hope we've not suddenly made this a therapy session. Me and Shreya, I really hope we are not.
No. If this was a therapy session, I'd like invoice you, but no.
Amazing.
Yeah, but how does one? And this is something that I know a lot of people from the community, because we're constantly on our guards, right? Like, with anything anyone says about the community, we are ready to, like, today I'll give you before I know I'm rambling, but there's this thing. I work with the WPP system, and there's this thing called WPP Unite, which I'm the co-chair for, and we are starting the new chapter, and there were people who were pitting themselves as the leads for certain committees, and I recall, like, after every speech, everyone was like, oh, good speech. And I was just this sourpuss who kept saying, yes, good effort. And then I had something negative to say, because I said things like, everyone needs to remember that queer issues are not special interest issues. And I was like, okay, am I being that person? Can I not be a little more accepting? So,
and correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes, when you live with a problem for a certain amount of times, it's natural to feel impatient about it because sometimes I think about, and I do this now in my head, am I being jaded or am I impatient right now? Like, because there's a lot of times I just started feeling, you know what, I'm 36, I've seen 36 years of this, and I'm jaded because of all the things I've seen. But now I started to feel like, no, it actually comes from a place of where I actually care about the problem. It's not like I'm jaded, which is the opposite of caring, but I actually care about the problem, and I don't have the patience to fucking go through something that I've already been through, or like, I don't have that patience. And in that sense, I seem like I have a short fuse all the time.
Yeah, but
this is definitely something that even I have struggled with, because I do have friends who are not queer. A lot of them come from genuine spaces of curiosity and help us be better and stuff like that. And then there have been some absolute assholes who like to have an intellectual debate with my identity. So see, it's always going to be subjective here also, because you don't know whether they're genuine or not till you're actually in that conversation. However, what works for me is the moment you realize that it is affecting you more than a conversation should, you're allowed to back off and say, hey, I know you want to learn, but this is getting way more than what I signed up for in terms of emotional labor. I need to take a pause on this conversation for my sanity. If you want, whatever we've spoken about till now, if you don't understand something about it, please Google. I need some time. And being so clear about your boundaries and saying, hey, this affects me more than it affects you, obviously, because it's more dear to me than it is to you. It's personal. It will always be personal. And I'm allowed to feel a certain way about it. I do not have to have a conversation by removing my emotions out of that conversation and being fully objective. I am going to be subjective about it. And right now, I do not want to spend that much emotional labor in explaining myself to you, because it gets there, right? It gets to a point where you're just explaining your reality to somebody.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And you can say, I don't want to do that anymore. I know I started to, but now I'm saying, stop.
Yeah.
If you want to continue to learn, please Google.
No, and sometimes it's just these kind of questions or whatever it is that irk us, they come in such inconspicuous ways, right? Like, I remember, I won't say his name, I was working with a very famous stand-up comedian before the pandemic. And every time he had a huge set, again, internationally acclaimed stand-up comedian. So
like
every time, yeah, you got it. And every time
I think that's
had like
the answer right there.
Yeah, that's the answer. But every time he would run his material, and let's say he had some sort of, a joke related to gay people or queer people or anything, right? Which he got into a lot of trouble for recently. But he would run it through me just because he knew that and I'm open to it. But every time I felt like I can't be your buffer for like you to figure out how to be a better person. Like,
and see, you stopped working with him and look what happened.
That wasn't the reason I stopped working with my project. And even currently, my current boss, like, he has this habit, first of all, to leave alone the fact that when he was interviewing me, he said something to the effect of, I have heard both your podcasts and we want more LGBTQ people on our team. I found that very like, no, don't hire me because you want some variety in your team. That was one thing. But till date, right? He'll send me like a random Sushant Degwekar singing video. He'll say, and there's no context. And the reason why it's a problem.
Tumko ye sab pasand hai na? Like, that sort of a thing. Like dads
this
who
is
don't know their
right
kids.
Up your alley, right?
Just be like.
And the fuck up is that he's borderline problematic as a straight cishet man. Like, he really sometimes says things. I'm like, dude, you can't say that anymore. I'm just doing it for the money. But like, when he sends me shit like this, that I'm trying to be inclusive by sending you the content I consume, which happens to sort of encompass what your sexuality is, I find it so offensive, but I can't say anything about it because he's just sending me a post of Sushant Degwekar singing. You know what I mean? Like, at some point, I'm like,
it's not
I can't
worth
be like, stop sending
the
me a
conversation. It's not worth the conversation. Sometimes, like, it's.
I'm not going to say, hey, stop sending me Sushant Degwekar singing. That's more. To tell someone. Like,
that's a conversation that's more arduous. Like, to explain like why the 10 reasons why this is not okay.
You should actually opt the other way around. You should be like, why did you send me this? And let them look for reasons that justify them not being
that sounds
the
like
idiots
better than my plan. I thought I'll just send him wrestling WWF videos from now. Like fucking.
No, but it's a good like to flip the table and say
let them have some introspection.
Which is smart. Like true. I mean, that's I think that would have solved like 90% of my life's problems if I had done that, like just gently. But since you spoke about the working environment, Farhad, I wouldn't even say we are on the threshold of, I think we've crossed this idea of embracing mental health. There is a need to embrace mental health in work environments across. Now, how does it work in a way where, how do we make it work as a community when there is a very, very high pressure work environment? But then there's this constant feeling that a person needs to justify that they are not feeling okay because the vocabulary doesn't exist, right? Like, I am feeling mentally ill just doesn't exist. That's still like a work in progress. And it often ends up meaning that if you are going through a mental health issue, unless you're one of those rare cases where you let your personal life suffer and don't let your professional life suffer, it usually ends up in either. But invariably, it ends up in you being cornered into a situation where you end up performing suboptimally. And how do you then tackle something like this? How do you work out a situation where having mental health issues, you get a buffer, but at the end of the day, an organization also has to work, right? It can't work if 100% of its workforce is facing mental health issues. And then what happens to the organization? Then what happens to the way of working? How does as an expert, what's the right way to work this out?
That's actually very interesting that you brought this up, because I will talk about this as somebody who can offer like an employee-employer perspective. But also, I've had that experience myself too. So before I was working for myself, I have worked as a mental health practitioner in places where my own mental health was not respected, and it was supremely hypocritical. It was shocking. I was confused. Even as somebody who knew that, your feelings are valid and there's no such thing as you're not doing enough work, but I had productivity guilt. I was like, okay, maybe I'm not doing enough.
Yeah.
And it gets to a point where there's only so much you can do as an individual, or even as one person in the organization really trying to implement policy changes, but it has to come from a very like collective idea where we have to really get this capitalistic regime out of our heads that our birth is only justified.
Yeah, like we are not saving lives
useful.
here. Like, yeah. I mean, how many
like
campaign
our lives are only worthy if we're useful. That whole idea needs to be thrown out of the window, because even if I am doing nothing, my life is still worth something. And honestly, if we really think about it, there is not a single person in this world who is truly doing nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, not counting.
Have you met Kim Kardashian West?
She's doing something.
Actually, she's doing a lot.
Yeah.
She's doing a lot. But yeah. No, I get where you're coming from.
You may not respect what they're doing, you may not agree with what they're doing, but everybody's doing something.
Yeah.
So
you are a verb.
That's
everybody is a verb.
So yeah, so there are definitely, like, I can offer certain things. For example, individuals need to work on themselves to realize that, this policy, like a lot of people have policies in their organizations. It's not just for show. You can use it. Access that. Don't wait for, तुम जाएगा तो ही दूसरा बंदा खड़ा होके बोलेगा मुझे भी जाना है. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Don't wait for somebody else.
Reason why most of the big places now have therapists within the company itself, right? Who you can talk to and all. Although there are never any good reviews.
A lot of different things happen. You hire people because you just want to show that you have a therapist on your payroll. Sometimes you hire people, but then the therapist is obliged to share session details with their employer, and that's a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a lot of that. So, I mean, like you mentioned, right? Like if there's a company of like 5 people and all 5 people have a mental health crisis on the same day, is the company not going to work for one day? Yeah, the company is not going to work for one day, because the people are more important than the product you're putting out.
Yeah.
No, people really need to understand that.
And I'm very proud to be part of an organization where I remember all of May, actually all of May and June, we have what we did was we decided to take all Fridays off too. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now the question then comes in from the clients, where the clients start getting irked over and over, and there's always a backlash somewhere down the line. It might not be directly them addressing that, so because you did this, that's why, but they're just pissed off. And then it becomes this case where there are some people, when some people are taken care of by an organization, there are other people who face the larger ire because they are taking the heat.
Which is Unnati answered it, right? The solution lies outside a capitalist framework, basically.
Yeah.
It's because there will be clients, there will be unhappy people. You can't.
I mean, if honestly, like right now, I have set the limit. I work for myself. I have set the limit that I'm going to work from X amount in the X AM in the morning to Y PM in the evening. If it were up to me to listen to every single client that I have, I will be working 24/7.
Yeah.
I have to say no and say, it's not going to work. I do not offer that service. Or I have clients who say, but I have a crisis today. I'm like, I'm sorry, it's my off day.
Yeah.
I have to be the asshole there and say, main chutti pe hoon.
Yeah.
And tell them, if you really are in a crisis, please reach out to a helpline. I am not your helpline. So, do my clients hate me for it? Actually, no, they don't, because they also understand that there's a human being behind.
Yes, there are, and I think the importance of boundaries is becoming more and more is coming to light more and more with every passing day, because the connections are so easy now. Getting to someone is so easy now, but also the connections, accessibility is so easy. So as a result, I'll give you an example. There's nothing that just boils my guts more than people calling me on WhatsApp.
Oh my God.
Like, it's, for me, it's like an invasion of privacy. Like, don't fucking call me on WhatsApp. Ek phone hai na, phone kyun? Why? Like,
as in, as someone who's very recently switched to WhatsApp calls, I've figured out it's just easier. Like, Netflix, I'm saying network-wise.
then just tell
also,
me.
I'm just going to backtrack a bit, but can I tell you something? I feel my therapist did, but was kind of it was very intelligently done. He said he's the same, right? Hey, it's my off day. Please, if it's a terrible this, but he's given me a code word, and like, okay, if it reaches like that level, then you can use this pass like as a code word. And what happens is sometimes I know he's
you want to save those code words for the really
so
bad
I remember this one time I was extremely suicidal. He was in Italy. He was holidaying in Italy. I remember because I was seeing him change his pictures and all, and I was like, having fun while I'm having a crisis. But every time I was like, okay, now it's code word time. I have to tell him that this is happening. I would actually introspect a little. Like, is this code word? Is this code word? Like, is this threat level midnight right now? Is this that bad? And actually, somehow I talk myself down every time. And I don't know if he intentionally did this whole code word system so that I talk myself down. But I have never.
The intention is never to like. So maybe the intention was not कि ये code word की वजह से you will introspect, but the setting that boundary that you have to think about this before you reach out to me.
I'd not want to be the boy who cried wolf. My thing was I'd not want to be the boy who cried wolf, because a lot of times, like I said, I start when I'm about to go to therapy, it's like, oh my God, this is the worst I've ever been. I'm going to be a messy fucking puddle of tears once and there. But more often than not, I leave very upbeat and like spring in my step and my tailbone, and I have like my posture is better. I don't know how that helps, but like, so I mean, it's stupid sometimes. Like, to constantly keep someone tied to me, like, oh my God, I'm bad right now. I'm bad right now. Give me not attention, but like, hey, this is bad. This is bad. This is bad. Like.
Limits are important. Letting the other person know about which expectations of yours are going to be fulfilled and which expectations are not going to be fulfilled is useful. I let my clients know I am not going to give you my phone number. I am not going to be available on WhatsApp or any kind of instant messaging app. You have my email. I will open that email app during my work hours. And I will respond to you when I can.
Amazing.
Because I will also be in sessions. It's not like 9 से 5 बजे तक मैं सिर्फ emails का reply करती हूँ.
So my therapist, for example, she gave me a number when earlier, I mean in 2020, late 2020, I had a massive crisis. So she said, if you ever need to reach out, please, I'm giving you this number. It's exactly like your situation, Farhad, with the code word, where I reach out only when I feel like, and I think about it. Do I need to do this? Like, I think about it. So I get it. But it's important for you to clarify. And there are so many of us who listen, so many people who listen to this podcast and ask us all the time, because we are proponents of mental health, and we tell everyone, if you have access to it, go to therapy. Not necessarily as a cure, but as a prevention. Let me complete. There are a lot of preconceived notions as to what therapy can do for you. What does it not do for you? Clarify it for people. What will it not magically do?
Your life is not going to change overnight. Your therapist does not hold the answer to all your questions. What it will absolutely never do is change you fundamentally, unless you really want to change. If you come to therapy saying, mujhe ye badalna hai, but you're not ready to commit to what it takes to change, therapy is not going to do jack shit. Another thing is, therapy is not a substitute for friendship. Therapy is not a substitute for social support.
Or make a t-shirt and sell it. Like, that should be merch.
It's not that, oh, I am lonely, so I should go to therapy. You should go to therapy to figure out why you're lonely and overcome whatever it is that is making you feel that way. But therapy is not going to get you a friend. Your therapist cannot be your friend. Your therapist cannot be your loved one. as much as and it gets strong, right? Like I know so many clients who do, because they tell me the deepest of their secrets.
Sure.
And I hold that space for them. So I am also investing that much time, effort, and energy in making that space for them. So it is a deeply intimate alliance, sure, but it is not a relationship.
Isn't there also a term for like developing feelings for your therapist? There is a term for it, right?
Transference.
Yeah, transference. Exactly. I've had that. Like, my therapist is entirely not my type, but at some point I constantly was like, his style looks so good on him today. He's been working
because so many of us are so starved of basic compassion and affection and care that we're like, oh, this person cares, they must love me.
Yeah.
But
in fact, I remember when I was leaving Bombay.
No, go ahead.
When I was leaving Bombay, and this year when I moved in Feb, and I was like, obviously my therapist has like been a pillar for me to reach where I am in a lot of ways. I remember when I was like, we had never hugged. I've been to him for 12 years and we sat across a table. But when I was finally like shaking his hand and I was like, hey, I'm leaving on a good note. I'm feeling great. If things go south, obviously I'll call you, whatever. But I think I'm ready to be in a different city, because even that was an anxiety for me that, oh my God, I'm going to be away from him. You know, that proximity alone was giving me anxiety. But when I was leaving, I was like, I'm going to go in for a hug, right? And when he hugged me, he said, I love you. Okay, I love you, Farhad. It played like a fucking tape that stuck in my head for the next 3 months. Like him, oh my God, he finally loves me. You know, like there was and I'm getting irritated. I'm getting irritated with myself that I'm constantly like making, because obviously he meant he loves me in a way where we've had this journey for 12 years, and sure, I'm going in and in the end it's transactional and I'm paying him for a service that he's providing or whatever. But you can't quantify that service he's providing to me, right? Because in a lot of ways today, I'm not dead because of him, you know? So it just felt those 3 words really like, and what you said, right now, like it's easy to mistake that kind of, but for 3 months, I was just like, oh my God, he said, I love you, which means he loves me. And all this while I thought I was just, for years, I was just giving him my problems and he must think I'm such an asshole and he must think I'm such a dick and I'm this and that and this. But to finally hear him say that he also is receptive of me, it was such a great feeling.
No, what I was coming to was that when you, as a therapist, I mean, I'm sure you feel for people, right? Like that's at the core of how you kind of, navigate through solutions. How do you, one, for yourself, create that boundary, or is it just something that you've trained yourself to do? Secondly, how do you let the person know that there is a difference, there is a difference in this relationship without letting them feel that, this is a cold transaction relationship?
So it's very easy to misunderstand and sort of confuse empathy and sympathy. So empathy is your ability to be in the space that person is feeling without making it about you or how you would have felt if you were in their shoes, which a lot of people think is actually empathy, but it's actually sympathy. Because you're feeling sorry for them because you would want someone to feel sorry for you. When you're when you're empathizing with someone, you understand that it fucking sucks, but it's not about you. Right?
You are not part of the equation.
It's not your story.
Yeah.
So understanding the nuances between empathy and sympathy can come through training. I genuinely believe that, through training and experience and constant working on yourself and your skills. But I also believe that certain times some people are better off as therapists than other people, because not everybody has that ability to be compassionate, to hold space for someone else.
Yeah, like I hate human beings. Like Just
that's your one this episode. Shanendra has to say that once every episode. Yeah.
You know, so I do believe that it's a mix of your inner ability as well as what you do with it, how you polish it.
Sure.
So it had to do with all the years of training that I had, understanding psychology, as well as my inclination and my innate ability to empathize with people. It's very like everybody has a soft spot. So you as a therapist, you have to work on yourself constantly, be very, very aware of what your triggers are, what your soft corners are. For example, you know how doctors aren't allowed to operate on their loved ones because
you can't take the right decisions, hard calls.
You're not going to be able to think.
Is this a real
You're not
thing?
Objective. Yeah,
I've never heard this before.
Yeah, you can't be. You won't be objective.
You can't handle your loved one's cases because you're not going to be objective about it. You're not going to take the best medical decision. You'll take an emotional decision. So similarly, like you have to understand where your objectivity is going to get lost. For example, over a period of time, I have recognized that there are certain topics, certain kinds of people, and certain backgrounds where people come from, where I will not be able to be objective with them for whatever reason. Maybe I'm biased towards them. Maybe I'm biased against them. Both of those things will work against them because they're coming here for therapy and I'm not going to be able to provide therapy. A lot of being aware of my own limits, because I can't do therapy for everyone. I would be supremely narcissistic if I thought that I could provide therapy for everyone or that I know everything and I'm the best. The second thing is communicating to the other person. In this regard, it's very important to initially have that conversation about, so what are your expectations from therapy? And here is what I can offer. So if it doesn't match for whatever reason, it's not a bad thing to stop.
Yeah,
It's very, very important to have that communication and tell them, I'm not going to be offended if you one day wake up and say, hey, Unnati, I don't think this is working for me anymore.
I'm so happy you're saying that as a therapist, because so many times I get and from friends even, not even just our listeners, but hey, can you give me a therapist number? And I send them all to my therapist but obviously he's not going to be an amazing therapist to everyone. You know, so a lot of times I get a little irked when I will be like, hey, how did it go or something? And I'm like, the therapy is not for me. No, I can't take meds. Oh, he did not understand. And I'm like, some even say he was curt, which I love about him. I love that about my therapist because of how curt he is, because I like that kind of no love, no nonsense kind of advice, you know. But obviously someone else is not going to like that. And so many times, more often than not, people have been like, he was very curt and he wasn't understanding my problem. He was just responding in one word. And I was like, okay, you know, and then they give up. And then
this is why everybody who comes to me for a first session, at the end of the session, I spend 5 minutes just telling them I want them to go talk to other therapists, maybe have like initial calls or whatever with them. Try out
date other people.
I've zeroed in on my therapist after she's my fourth therapist. The first 3 times it just didn't work out because like you said, it wasn't that therapy wasn't for, and I've been guilty of saying therapy is just isn't for me, but I realized that the therapist and I just don't sync. The styles just don't sync. I need someone to talk to me like an equal.
In fact, sometimes therapy with one person can work for as long as that particular approach needs to help you. After a while, you can be like, okay, so I needed somebody to like really say kindly fuck off to me. Now, I think I'm ready for somebody to call me on my bullshit.
And it will be another person.
And you can switch therapists.
Sometimes I thought it's unhealthy because the first therapist I went to was the only therapist I've been to. And 12 years high. And this is like for not like, just small stuff, like the big stuff, you know. But now that I've not been to him for the past 6 months or so, I keep thinking about what it was. And it was exactly this no bullshit, not tough love, but like just someone who's like, hey, you're being stupid right now, Farhad. You know, like just another voice which basically my self-preservation voice. I wanted it as a person, and my therapist ended up being that. And so much so that sometimes I would be like, is this normal that I've only been the one therapist in the last 12 years? And
there is no such thing as abnormal.
I know. No, the fact that right now I can sit here and just communicate and not be like deep in the issues that I've dealt with over the years and just be vocal, I feel like it has worked so amazing. I quickly do want to ask you a couple of things though, and we can, it's not a rapid fire of any sort, but like, there's always like, so there are certain problems within the community, right? Coming back to like the LGBTQIA plus community, like there's always been like certain issues that have dogged us for as long as we can remember. For example, coming out.
Yeah.
Coming out. Should I come out to my family? So again, for people who are listening,
like
is there any sort of, oh, that's an old school approach, this is the modern approach, and like, okay, let's start with coming out. Do you have anything that, I know it doesn't fit all, right? It's not like, oh, everybody should come out to their parents or everybody should not come out to their parents. But do you have an overarching, like someone who's struggling with coming out or should come out? What would you have to say to them?
Actually, this is really nice question. And I've written an article on whether or not you should come out because when I was working with an organization called the Thoughtco, we really wanted to put out a lot of content that is layperson friendly, that's not too technical, but also comes from a very informed, like psychologically informed place about how to tackle everyday issues that people really need to talk about. So I wrote an article, and I was basically just saying, don't use this as a decision maker for whether or not you must or should come out, but more about, okay, so in my journey to make that decision, there are certain questions that I should probably think about. For example, what are my parameters of safety? Because being queer to an extent in this country is still kind of unsafe.
Yeah.
Right? It just changes marginally for like different people, because we all have different levels of privilege.
And
So how safe is it for me to come out? What are my financial, emotional, social, legal consequences of making this decision? And am I prepared for it? Or can I work with it? Then there are questions like, okay, do I have adequate support? Do I have somebody that I can reach out to if the way I have planned things don't go that way? How much does family acceptance matter to me? A lot of these questions are so personal, and only that person can decide this for themselves. And at the end of the day, whether you decide to come out, whether you decide not to come out, whether or not you're ever able to decide whether you want to come out or not, and you're just always like, it depends, I don't know, I'm not sure. At the end of the day, it's really about knowing whether or not you've come out to yourself.
Oh my God, so important.
Yeah.
Because so many people rush to live my authentic life without realizing what the definition of authenticity means. It means to be completely bare to our own selves, more than it's about, telling your parents or your loved ones or whoever. For example, for the longest time when I would contemplate coming out, I would be like, you know what, if I want to marry somebody who's not a dude, maybe I'll tell my parents, because I don't want to go through the whole nonsense of talking to this about this to my parents. And then one fine night, I was just sitting with my mother and we were just talking about some random nonsense at 3 a.m. and without thinking, I just told her.
You tapped into that energy.
I just told her everything. Has that changed her expectations of like, or hopes and dreams ki like Unnati will stick to like cishet plans that I had for her since she was born? Maybe not. But she started using whoever you marry instead of the guy you marry. Or maybe you should get out of this country so that you can live the life that you want to live. So there are subtle changes. Am I like, is she the flag bearer of queer rights? Maybe not. Does it matter to me? it doesn't really matter to me because it's not stopped me from living the life that I was always
I'm so
living.
glad I asked this. Because more often than not, I know me and Shunitra, whenever we get this question, so should I come out, should I not? And more often than not, we just, first of all, not therapists. So we can't we don't know your situation. And secondly, I at least tend to ask what's the financial situation.
Yeah, we always say judge that situation
and
first.
Sometimes
and even a therapist can't say, if you go to a therapist and they say, should I come out? The therapist not going to give you a yes or no answer. They're going to be let's sit and talk about it. Why do you want to come out? What are you confused about? Where are you leaning towards? What do you want to do? So it's really about people owning their choices. And if you're not sure, it's okay to not be sure. There is no rush.
Sure. Okay. So that was coming out. I have another one. I'm literally saying this based on the cloud words on how big they are in my inbox, based on the listeners we have, right? Loneliness. Do you have something you would like? Because it's so often that I'm feeling lonely. I don't know if I'll ever end up. The community, dating culture, hookup culture is such. Nobody is invested in something serious. And more often than not, I'm like, hey, I'm lonely too. And the only difference is that now I identify as self-partnered, so I'm happy being lonely. You know what I mean? But a lot of times, I don't know what to say to a lot of, and not that I'm asking you this, so this is what I can say to someone, but just if someone is listening and they're feeling incredibly lonely, the old school, I will end up alone if I choose the gay life, that I will die alone. Any sort of quick words of wisdom on that?
So this is actually very important also. So there's a component to our loneliness as queer people that comes from not being able to connect with the world at large because it's not designed for us. A different component of loneliness comes from the fact that we're a minority, right? The default is considered to be cishet, and we're the outliers or the deviants, so to speak. And I'm making very aggressive quotation marks in the air for people who are listening. So because there's already this perceived idea of वैसे ही कम लोग हैं, और इसमें भी अगर कोई गलती से मिल गया तो ये डर होता है कि इसने छोड़ दिया तो मुझे कोई नहीं मिलेगा, और अगर कोई नहीं मिला तो I'm going to die alone because I'm unlovable. There's another aspect of that unlovableness that comes from that internalized feeling of I'm worthless because I'm not who I'm supposed to be. I'm different. I'm weird.
Obviously, this is all also steeped in our growing up or formative years being so fractured, or not fractured, but
not really having a destination to look at or a role model. That's the biggest issue.
And that's even if there are role models, what are the most visible role models that we have of queer people? Probably celebrities.
Yeah, and they are just not relatable.
Culture is not stable at all.
Yeah.
Forget relatable. It's not stable only. So for 10 years, you can be, in love with Brangelina, and then they fucking split and your world has come down in shambles because you're like, Arey yaar, if they can't find true love, to make kya cheez?
I idolized Michael Jackson, growing up. I was like, wow, Michael Jackson, fake marriage, and he changed colors over time. But Michael Jackson was not the best person to idolize growing up.
Loneliness is going to be there for a variety of reasons. It's important to figure why am I feeling lonely. There's also this idea of cishet world says कि तुम्हारे पास कोई ना कोई होना चाहिए वरना तुम incomplete हो.
One of my aunts, when I was at a wedding and I had gone with a plus one and I had taken a boy, and she was just coming, she knew that, every time I'm coming with a guy, so it's a thing. So she'd do this cute little boyfriend, boyfriend, is this your boyfriend? And I was like, no, it's my plus one, I don't want to put this on it. And, once she said something that literally, it just fucking tattooed itself on my brain, She said, but settle down. If it's a boy, at least settle down. Because let's say you're 70 and you fall and you crack your hip, who will pick you up? And that sentence, which is so stupid, right? It's such a stupid. I'm not going to be worried till 70 that
why do you think people have kids?
Yeah.
तुम बूढ़े हो जाओगे तुम्हारा ध्यान कौन रखेगा? अरे
It's like return on investment.
It's not even return on investment. You are basically just birthing slaves.
Yeah. Which is why whenever a lot of times people have said this to me, at least not like online people, I'm just like, talk to a therapist. I can't give you an answer about loneliness and all, because loneliness could mean a lot of things. And I don't know how this person's frame of mind is.
There is a large part of history that you have to unspool for loneliness. So
no, but at least when it's come from a friend, when it's come from a friend, I usually now, because I experience that on a daily basis, my first question to them always is, why do you feel that you need someone else for this issue to go away? Why do you think you will not be lonely if you're with someone? You can be lonely.
Exactly.
And that's even worse. Imagine being in a relationship and feeling lonely. That's even worse.
What am I doing wrong? Now I have everything. I've ticked all the boxes. What the heck is still wrong with me?
I somehow, the older I get, I find this idea of an external person coming to a kind of like, which kind of maybe is why I've chosen to be single in some ways, but like I just find it arbitrary now. This idea that someone else can come and fix something, or
and when you find somebody else, then they'll be like, "Acha, abhi bacha kar lo, warna suna lagta hai."
Like you're just basically finding ways to shackle your situation so that there is no dynamism.
Default relationship escalator. You have to date, then you have to marry, then you have to have kids, then you have to get your kids married, then you have to this is your life.
No, but that's
which brings me to a very important, this Q word, success, because this is a matter of a lot of debate within the queer community, because there are so many fraught examples, because gays, so single earners, so there's a certain lifestyle, but also we've been exposed to the Ryan Murphy gaze and the a very warped idea, a very unreal idea of what a gay man would be, designer clothes and just overseas trips and stuff like that. So success.
And sometimes the stereotype is kind of poor, by the way, because I had this genuine anxiety from the age of like 25 to 30, where I started actually having the first gay friends of my life. And these are gay friends who are like 40 years old, 45, in a relationship since 10 years with another man, and I would see their houses and shit, and I would actually get anxiety that, oh my god, if I need this amazing house that they have in Kolaba, how I'm so far away from it. You're already 25. Like, I drove myself nuts about that. I remember for a good couple of years. Now I don't give a shit. But
so, obviously, when you're looking at it from a society perspective, your success has nothing to do with how you feel. It has, success is not for you.
I love this about you, Unnati. Whatever you immediately somehow managed to diffuse it in the first sentence itself. It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah.
But if you really want to get into, I want to find out what success means to me, then the sky is the limit. It could mean anything at all. There was this wonderful comic that I recently came across from Storyseller on Instagram. So there's this Instagram handle called Storyseller Comics. And he basically put out this wonderful post about this person saying, congratulations for being born. Here are your shoes. And the other person just goes, shoes? For what? For the race of life. And there was there was the racetrack, and then there was green fields, and the other person who's just been born says, what's over there? And the person's like, where? There. And they go to the field and this is so much better, I think I'm going to be here. And the other person's like, but then you won't be able to finish the race. And the first person says, I think I will, let me define when I want to finish, what I mean by finish. And the final, I think the final post was, what is the point of living up to your fullest potential if you're not even living?
True.
So this idea of I need to be successful, ek bangla, do gaadi, 4 bachche. If that is your idea of success, and if it truly gives you fulfillment and happiness, go for it. But let it not be an adopted idea.
Yeah.
If it takes you 10 years to figure out what success means for you, that's fine. Honestly, I have no clue what success means for me. And if I die with zero clue of what success meant for me, that's fine.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So good.
We put so much, like with all of this Deepak Chopra and who's that think like a monk dude who keeps plagiarizing shit from other people.
Robin Sharma.
No, Jay Shetty, who keeps plagiarizing other people's content. There's so much pressure and like, this is my life's purpose and I need to know the meaning of my life.
I started getting so pissed off with these, inspirational sort of biceps. Talks. No, even this one, Steve Harvey, he keeps doing these. You know what billionaires did? They didn't sleep till 8 a.m. Fuck you. It is important to sleep.
Their employees did not sleep till 8 a.m.
Exactly. That's what happened. Fuck you.
Yeah, no, but I'm glad it's become a part of the modern this to call out this hustle culture type bullshit.
Absolutely.
But the hustle culture is getting replaced by this purpose culture.
Yeah.
That you still need to have a purpose in your life.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's okay to live life aimlessly. We're floating on a giant ball that's flying at unbelievable speeds out like in the middle of nowhere. It does not matter what your purpose is. If you don't have one, it's okay.
Yeah. Amazing. Oh my God. The other day I read something that really, sometimes you read something and you realize, oh shit, I actually was anxious about this particular thing. I had no idea. But I was reading about, because you said Instagram, I was reading about how the previous generation before us believed that hard work is what takes you where you want to be, And now we are in the middle, and then there's this new generation that really is like your influencers and all, who just like through TikToks and Reels, who are also hardworking, no doubt about that.
But it's definitely hard work. I tried to have an Instagram presence for my practice, and I left it after 3 posts. I was like, many percent.
Oh no, but like this. It's so easy to look at the new generation and be like, oh, you have it easy, and you just do a couple of dances on Instagram.
And a lot of these boomer people have this argument कि हम लोग तो 4-4 घंटे जाग के ये करते थे, वो करते थे, and you have it so much better than us, and look at you being so ungrateful about it. But wasn't that the point of you toiling away to make it better for the following generations? Wasn't that the point?
Yeah, exactly. No, but I did not know I was wedged in this dichotomy basically where, oh my God, I need to work hard, or actually if I just do a few things and be at the right place at the right time, things work out your way. Like that, just realizing that, hey, that's why I feel a lot of the things I feel, it was like really, it alleviated a lot of unnecessary stuff I might have thought over time, like, or being jaded about younger people in general.
Yeah. Yep. This has been a fantastic,
amazing.
I mean, by far one of the best, just chat sessions we've had, and I mean, like I'm sure the audiences feel so.
And
too.
A lot of times we tend to do like this free-flowing conversation. We do have pointers and stuff.
Yeah.
But I like that this conversation. Sure, we did touch upon towards the end, like what the LGBTQ community goes through, but it also became so much about what therapists go through. Like I like that. I don't know. We never think about that kind of stuff. So, and it was absolutely illuminating, like to hear you talk.
Yeah.
I had so much fun. I would have I've had experiences with podcasts as a listener, and I've also done podcasts with some other friends and, people that I knew. And it had always been like a very shortish and very, stick to the pointers and plan it out.
Oh,
and
no, we talk.
We intentionally, that's why I don't like to plan.
I was so anxious, and I was like, okay, I need to be prepared of what do I want to say? How do I put my points across? And then the moment, the first 2 seconds of entering this Zoom meeting and hearing both of you interact with each other, I go, it's fine. You might notebook can go fuck yourself.
To the point that Farhad and I actually don't interact beyond this. So literally we catch up here.
Only here.
So it's amazing because we catch up on life on the podcast.
And we tend to keep it light. Even a while ago when I was talking about class asshole opening and all of that, I was like, oh my god, you have a guest, Farhad. You can't say this kind of shit. But then that's how life is. Sometimes even the other day when I did it, guys. I finally, for the first time, I hooked up with someone without knowing their name, and it was such a. And what I'm trying to get at is this gay life. Like I don't get surprised anymore. Like I literally spoke with this person the entire day. Like morning we started chatting. By evening he rang my doorbell, and I realized, oops, I did not ask this person's name. In fact, there wasn't even the usual trajectory of, Grindr, exchange pics. Okay, what's your Instagram? What's your WhatsApp? Send me location. This was just a direct, put in this in your Google Maps, you'll land right outside my house. Rang the doorbell and I was suddenly like, oh shit, I don't know how to address this person. Like, I don't know his name.
Hey, you! That's usually what.
Hey, nice muscles, bro. Bizarre. What is this life sometimes? Amazing. Thank you so much. We'll come back. We have a little section towards the end. We will come back to that after a short break. But amazing. Yeah.
Are you looking for finance products and services that can enhance your personal finance experience? Are you looking for a space to talk about your financial product or service? And are you looking for a crisp talk show where the conversation is all about money? Well, your search ends here. Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta and I'm host of the Paisa podcast, and I invite you for the conversation about your personal finance on each Monday on the IVM Podcast app or the website or on any podcast streaming platforms. See you folks.
All right, we are back and we are here for the happy segment where we recommend a lot of amazing stuff. Farhad, what's your recommendation for the week?
My God. Recommendation is actually a book I'm reading. It's called The Body Keeps a Score.
By Bessel van der Kolk.
I don't know. It was one of those books that kept popping up on a lot of lists, especially for like trauma. And I've been reading it, and it's so good. I'm literally.
However, as a therapist, I also want to give like a trigger warning to people out there. If you are somebody who's been through like serious amounts of trauma. Or you are somebody who does get overwhelmed with like a lot of information.
Do not, because he does get into it. He gets into it.
It can get very, like if you're somebody who's not used to introspecting at all, please go to therapy before you read this book.
Because I kept seeing it pop up on a lot of lists, and I thought, wow, trauma, hello, so let me read. And it's such a refreshing read because for the first time I'm reading about the physical implications of something that might have happened to you in your childhood. So for example, again, I'm very vocal. One of the things I was heavily, like my mom hit me heavily when I was a child. And it wasn't like a slap or on the butt. I got a lot of head related like hitting, like banged against the wall. And again, I don't want to get serious or go south towards the end or all. But to read about what happens to you if you're hit on your head as a child, or to know what happens to you if you saw a parent get assaulted as a child. Like all these different scenarios, I know, which is very triggery, like in a lot of ways, but to know actually the science of how your brain chemistry changes when these things happen to you, it's amazing.
And for like things to finally start clicking, I'm sure when you read stuff, you'll be like, figures why it happens.
Or why I feel like this in a relationship, or why am I like this sometimes. And again, sometimes I'm very dismissive about like, blaming it all on the chemistry of my brain. I don't know. I believe that also. And sometimes I feel like, no, it's also not entirely chemistry. I am in control or whatever. But this book is perfectly balancing that for me. And I love how medical also it gets. It really gets medical, the book. Like, your amygdala or what? Am I pronouncing it right? Your amygdala or your hypothalamus does this if this happened to you as a child. Like, Wow, I'm like amazing.
These are such amazing names for
dogs.
dogs and cats. Amygdala.
And they're explained, like he's explained it so beautifully because he also gives you metaphors so that you understand exactly what function those parts of your brain have in in being able to deal with everyday stressors.
And to find answers of why I might have such a good sense of humor born out of this kind of trauma. It's like, what? Like, it's insane. Like, it's one of those books, I'm reading it on my Kindle, and pretty much every page is now highlighted. Everything is being highlighted because, wow, this is a good chunk. This is a good chunk. So the body keeps a score. I keep forgetting the author's name.
Bessel van der Kolk.
That's the one. Amazing. Great book. But I would recommend to whoever's going to buy it on Amazon, don't buy it on Amazon because the print is tiny. Like, I don't know why Penguin has done that. So get an electronic version if you're going to read it.
And it's also really expensive if you end up buying it, like a physical copy.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's my recommendation.
Unnati, what's your recommendation?
I would recommend watching the Matrix trilogy.
Did it. I rewatched it this year. Yeah.
I literally did that last week. Like literally did that last week.
Rewatch it from the point of view of a trans experience.
Amazing.
And and read up about the directors.
Yes. And also like try to realize how this, like how it would factor in the world of gender. Like I'm talking mainly to like our listeners because I know both of you done this, and y'all could maybe
actually, if you could like tell me why as a trans experience, like what part, like Neo.
So
or what?
The world basically the world that Neo wakes up from is the metaphor for the cishet world that everybody is indoctrinated into. Neo having woken up from it is like a trans person's experience of being disillusioned from the cishet world in a way that, oh, none of this makes sense to me, none of this applies to me, I do not belong in this world. And then figuring out against every odd what you want your reality to be like. So it's very like, I mean, the moment you read up about the director's experience, how like the director actually talks about how they wrote this movie before coming out. And they didn't even realize that they wrote this movie as a coming out. You know, to the world. So when you look at it from that perspective, so many things start making sense. And it's personally so close to my heart because I am non-binary. I identify on the trans spectrum, right? And I picked up on that. Like I saw Matrix as a kid and I related with it so hard. And then I read up about this recently and I was like, oh my God, this is where it makes sense.
Yeah.
Amazing. So it's a beautiful piece of work.
I can't wait for the new one.
I cannot wait.
I have a feeling that
please don't tell me you don't like the fact that there's Priyanka Chopra in it.
Yeah, that's
but there is a possibility she's probably Sati.
Oh, I kept thinking they've done some oracle twist on her, like because
I have a feeling that she's one of those people who sends Neo down a rabbit hole.
I have a feeling I love Priyanka. Firstly, I love Priyanka Chopra.
Like the only thing I have is that, I just hope that because it's so important and it has been so path-breaking for so many people, I just hope that they've done something worthwhile with it and put soul into the fourth movie and not just made it because everyone's churning out sequels.
I love, honestly, I never saw it from this point of view until you shed some light on it. And I love it when sometimes you find out later on, because like you said, right, you saw Matrix at an early age. And even though you might have not seen it from that point of view, you totally related to it. At the peak of my addiction, like when I was going through a lot of substance abuse, I happened to see Lord of the Rings. And I thought the movie was entirely about addiction. Like the more I kind of like, oh my God, this constant need to like feel this thing and you want to fight it, but you can't fight it. And the whole point is to destroy it.
Feeling helpless and...
it was just like amazing. It was amazing. Wow. Matrix.
One of the best movies ever
franchises
made.
And
ever made.
I saw all three of them recently, and none of them is better than the other. They all are.
I mean, for me, the first one
will
is
always be
special because it's just a lot more organic in terms of how everything was built. It was because the next one's got more CG progressively. Like
I don't know.
It felt intimate.
Spiritually, I found the third one the most like.
There is a lot of mythology in the third one, like which is very beautiful, which is true. Yeah.
Because even in the understanding of our own gender and our identity, there's a whole aspect of like, oh, is gender our body? It's not. Is gender our clothes? It's not. Is gender our genitals or our chromosomes? It's not. So there is something that's not physical about our gender, right? And that ties in so beautifully with other metaphysical ideas. So it has to be a spiritual experience.
It's insane. Even I remember when, because back then when I saw the movie, every time each installment released, I happened to see it in the theater. This is like VCD times and all. And a VCD would come out months or a year or 2 years after the movie was out, basically. But I remember seeing the second one where Neo goes into to meet the Merovingian and Monica Bellucci for the first time in that club. And I remember everyone dressed in like this leather or very fetish. And I remember watching it with all my straight friends, and that scene had such a deep impact on me. I don't know why. It was just everybody looks like fucking
culturally
in that scene.
Yeah. Culturally, it's so important, right? Because like there was so much non-cishetness in that movie.
And you know what? I could never pinpoint. I could never express how what I was watching on the screen was so queer. And I couldn't share it with people because people wouldn't, I always felt people wouldn't understand. Like the celebration scene where, I mean, it's
everyone's dancing.
The dancing, I mean, it's really like, panned by critics, but it feels so queer. Because...
And the fact that, a lot of people have this thing of like, oh, queer people will make movies and content that's like in our faces, don't shove your culture in our faces. But the Matrix trilogy is something that even like the dudest bros of the straight world will like, oh my god, Matrix, So, I mean, it's testimony to the fact that let people make art.
Absolutely.
It does not have to be gendered. It does not have to be limited to like, oh, so queer people will make art that's for queer people. Straight people will make art that's for straight people. Just let people make art and,
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What's your suggestion?
Well, so here's the thing. Everyone's heard or, either read Life of Pi or heard about it or watched the movie. So it's written by a writer called Ryan Martel. Now, before Life of Pi, he wrote another book called Self, which is, again, I love recommending stuff that isn't, top of the charts when it comes to critics, because I want people to judge for themselves. And I'll tell you why, because I read it before I read any reviews. It's a story of one person talking about how they're forming their own identity. And this is before I understood anything about being trans, being the idea of trans, the idea of shifting gender balances. The story can be seen so as a great work of the fluidity of how someone's gender evolves, because what ends up happening is this person, it's completely in first person, but it's a fictional story. And there are pit stops where they refer to themselves as a woman and they experience life as a woman. And then bang, suddenly they are in a world of privilege where they are a man. And I never understood at that point of time. I felt very safe while reading a book because it felt like kinship. But when other friends read it, they felt it was just jargon, like ye kya ho raha hai. Today, when I look back and I feel like maybe there's a trans allegory over there, I want people to find out. I want people to read it and find out for themselves. It's a very interesting... there are a lot of experiments that might not be successful, but are very interesting experiments. For me, Self by Jan Martel is an interesting experiment. It might not have succeeded, but it's definitely worth everyone's time. So yeah, Self by Jan Martel. All right.
Amazing.
So we have enough recommendations for you guys for last week, and we'll be back next week.
I feel like this is our longest episode so far.
Ever.
I feel.
Ever.
No?
Oh my
It
God.
doesn't even feel like it, but
Yeah.
but first and foremost, I mean, Unnati, thank you for being here.
Thank
I
you.
just had one of the best evenings in
Yeah.
quite a while.
Yeah.
So
There are episodes where I feel like, like it was an episode. And then there are episodes while we are talking about it where I already know this is going to be one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah.
This is one of it.
Yep.
That is so sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Guys, it was
I hope
wonderful
we
for
can
me
get
too,
you
because
back
I
again.
think this is
Yeah.
the most fun I've had while talking about something that's so close to
We are
my
fun
heart.
people. What can I say? We are
Yeah.
fun people.
Not that your ego needs any more stroking.
Amazing.
But this was wonderful, and I'd love to do this again.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Amazing. We'll take you up on
Absolutely.
that. We'll take you up
Very
on that.
seriously.
And thank you so much for
Thank you
joining
so
us.
much.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for having me.
Shanendra. I kind of missed you in the last 2 weeks. I missed you, man.
But yeah,
and,
we are back.
I will see you next week with a new topic, with a new guest who's hopefully as good as Unnati.
Yeah. It's a sign for everyone to step up.
Unnecessary pressure.
Yeah. All right. So see you
All
guys.
right, we'll see you next week. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
What if you could relive some of the biggest and most public feuds in Indian corporate history?
Peer back through the window of time to see who among HUL or Nirma stood on top.
Or who was more dominant between Tata Motors and Maruti Suzuki?
Tune in with me, Ambi Parmeshwaran,
And me, Anupam Gupta, on Bank of Baroda presents The Last Brand Standing,
where we talk about two brands vying for the top position.
and what their journeys were,
Every Tuesday on the IVM Podcast app or website.
or wherever you get your podcast from.
सफर, रास्ते, मंजिल और मुकाम अक्सर ये हमसे कुछ कहना चाहते हैं, पर हम हैं कि अपनी रोजमर्रा की जिंदगी में इन्हें सुनने से कतराते हैं। नमस्ते दोस्तों, मेरा नाम है केशव चतुर्वेदी और मैं आपको ले चलूंगा कुछ ऐसे सफर पर जहां आपको एक नया नजरिया मिलेगा सफर और मंजिलों को देखने का। आइए इन किस्से कहानियों में डूब जाएं। हर मंगलवार और शुक्रवार